My name is Colby Atchison. I'm here with Educational Renaissance, where we promote a rebirth of ancient wisdom for the modern era. Today I want to talk to you about my ebook that's now available online for free. It's called The Craft of Teaching, Teach Like a Champion for Classical Educators. And in this ebook, I discuss how classical teachers can implement the techniques from Teach Like a Champion 2.0 while remaining true and committed to a classical philosophy of education. For some time now, classical educators have been using Teach Like a Champion 2.0 in their classrooms. It's full of actionable techniques that lead to results right away, and I highly encourage many of the techniques. And yet, some classical educators rightfully have wondered from time to time whether this book is actually compatible or amenable with a classical philosophy of education. So in this ebook, I walk through the different values of classical education. I break down Teach Like a Champion 2.0 into its different parts, and I provide some commentary on analysis that hopefully will be helpful for you as teachers as you implement these techniques in the classroom. So just to tell you a little bit about how the book breaks down, in chapter 1, I talk about the goal of teaching. And I remind us that education ultimately isn't about getting into college one day or getting that high-earning career, as important as some of those things can be. But really, the goal of teaching within the classical tradition is about the cultivation of virtue. It's about the pursuit of wisdom. It's about thinking about deeply what humans are for, what they're made for, and how therefore we can best equip them from a young age to achieve their purpose. So that's chapter 1, the goal of teaching. Now in chapter 2, I talk about growing the craft, and I emphasize that teaching is a craft. It's a rare and valuable skill that takes discipline and focus and perseverance over time to really get good at it. It requires us to take an honest look at outcomes in our classroom, to see how we're doing, to learn from mentor teachers, and to drive our own development. So that's chapter 2, growing in the craft. Now in chapter 3, I start moving into some of the techniques from Teach Like a Champion 2.0. So I talk about the quest for understanding, and I think about knowledge and the nature of knowledge and why it is that humans desire knowledge in the first place. I look at some of the techniques from Teach Like a Champion 2.0 and how we as teachers can use those in a way that we're not just using knowledge for pragmatic means, but can actually pursue knowledge so that we can grow in our understanding of God's created world and indeed grow in wisdom as we seek to navigate the complexities of the modern world. Well, in chapter 4, I talk about redeeming academic rigor. You know, academic rigor is such a popular tagline today. Most schools have that front and center on their website, and for good reason. We want to provide education, an education that challenges students, that meets them where their strengths and their challenges align. But at times, we can lose focus on why we're trying to be rigorous in the first place. We can forget that human beings are persons made in God's image, and that we have been created to do meaningful, worthy work. And we need to do that especially in our schools, not just for the sake of academic rigor, but for challenging our students so that they can grow and cultivate the skills and abilities that God made them for to glorify His name. So that's chapter 4, redeeming academic rigor. And in chapter 5, the work of learning, I look in depth at Dorothy Sayers' famous lecture from 1948, The Lost Tools of Learning, and I explore about the true nature of learning, and I integrate it with Doug Lamoth's idea of ratio. This idea that in the classrooms, students should be the ones doing the cognitive work, not the teachers. We want to prepare students to become lifelong learners, and we can do that every day by giving them meaningful work to do, and not just lecturing from on high, but instead getting students to do the work of learning through things like narration, discussion, writing. So that's chapter 5, the work of learning. Well, finally, in chapter 6, I talk about cultivating a classroom culture. And in this chapter, I break down the dichotomy that has emerged in our modern world between morality on the one hand and achievement on the other. So often those two just don't go hand in hand. Well, in a classical framework, we want to keep those two together. We believe that excellence and virtue, that morality and achievement can go hand in hand in an optimal classroom culture. If teachers employ the right values in the classroom, cast vision in the right way, and hold their students to worthy work. So that's Chapter 6, Cultivating a Classroom Culture. Well, I hope this video has been helpful for you to get a taste of what this ebook is about. Ultimately, I wanted this ebook to be practical, but also encouraging. You know, there's a lot of different philosophies of education out there. There's a lot of different techniques out there on how to best teach students. Well, in this ebook, I hope to bring the two together, provide a holistic philosophy of education rooted in the classical tradition, while also giving some practical tools that teachers can implement right away. I hope it's helpful. Please let me know if it is. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm going to include a link to the ebook in the section below.